the gut is it's more or less the second or a major component of our immune system and the way our immune system affects everything else. And it's more through the immune pathways in which our gut will affect a lot of our brain and our hormones and everything else. And it's actually in the adrenals, our HPA axis, our adrenals, the medulla of the adrenal gland is actually more neural tissue than anything else. You could almost say that the adrenals are the second brain. It's kind of a cool concept, and I don't even know if I'm going anywhere specifically with that, but we're going to talk, I'm going to break down kind of what I would want people to take away and understand about healing overall health. We're going to talk about leaky gut a little bit, but in actuality, when it comes down to it, leaky gut is an overused term. I mean, I even got flack about it when I started posting some of the flyers and stuff like that, and memes and posts on Instagram and different places. People wanting to say that, yeah, that was an overused term, or it's a term that draws people in, and it's more of a clickbait type of thing. And I would actually somewhat agree with that. There are people dealing with intestinal permeability, and if you look up scientific terminology, they don't use leaky gut on PubMed, they use intestinal permeability. So if you want to read more about leaky gut, quote, intestinal permeability, you're going to want to search PubMed and intestinal permeability, search that terminology there. We know that antibiotics can cause this. We know that inflammation, we know that things like Crohn's disease and colitis, IBD, situations like that can cause it. We now know, without a shadow of a doubt, that leaky gut can be caused by gluten, celiac disease for sure, even gluten sensitivities. Maybe not full-blown celiac disease, but even gluten by itself, in which there is some indication in assumption and theory that it's not necessarily the gluten, it may be the glyphosate. Glyphosate being Roundup in essence, which Roundup is more than just glyphosate, but glyphosate itself, the compounds can cause leaky gut in bees and ultimately lead to diseases and illnesses and immune compromise in our beehives. Thus, hive collapse happening all over the world. Thank God for many countries actually banning glyphosate use in those countries and other pesticides and herbicides that are destroying our bees. One really cool thing, though, is that the bees in nature actually know what they can do to help counteract that. And studying the effects of medicinal mushrooms, you can actually find I keep mulch piles and logs near my bees, and you'll actually see at times, not all the time, but you'll see at times, the bees will go to those mulch piles. It was something I learned from a mycologist, and I'm slipping on his name, but a great mycologist actually discovered this or identified it and then led me to understand it and notice it. But bees will go to harvesting some of the mycelia in in mulch piles, and ultimately using that to help build back up their immune system. So it's like we can use medicinal mushrooms, bees use medicinal mushrooms. So if you observe what nature is doing and act upon it, you will become healthier as well. So just looking at the chart here, this is the effects. If you're on the extreme of true leaky gut, you're looking at the right-hand side of the slide in front of you. I believe it's the same kind of, I don't think it's switched on everybody else, but where you can see the actual tight junctions are broken down. Normally, we're going to want our mucosal membrane barrier, those cells of our digestive tract lining, but that can be both in the esophagus and the lungs, the vaginal tract, basically any mucosal membrane, any membrane of our body that's going to be exposed to the exterior environment, external environment. And that includes inside of us, the intestines is actually, the intestinal wall is a wall and a barrier that is between our external environment and our internal body. Our digestion takes place externally from us, in essence. When we digest and break down foods, it's externally, and then it's absorbed through those tight junctions, through those cells, through the mucosal membrane cells. So we want things. We want toxins. We want bacteria. We want viruses, certain ones that stay externally. Whoop, somebody unmuted themselves there. And I had everybody muted, but all right. So Kylie, if you're on, could you go ahead and mute yourself? I guess I have to go back and mute all again. Don't allow. Okay, there we go. I should have it good now. So sorry about that. I gotta get rid of this. There we go. So we want certain things to get in. I'll break that down for you. And we want other things to stay in our external environment and broken down into their fragments and pieces, such as protein. Those things we do not want ingested internally. But when we have leaky gut, when those cells are inflamed, when we've broken down the mucosal barrier, actually the mucus in the digestive tract lining, we want those things. Something's going on with my computer, but I think we're good. All right. So here's what happens. GI inflammation, whatever it may be, antibiotic use, severe diarrhea, gastrointestinal inflammation from Crohn's disease and other autoimmune disorders, biotoxins, glyphosate, other things increase the spacing between those cells, ultimately leading to intestinal permeability breakdown, and then ultimately leading to the ingestion and absorption of food proteins, leading to food intolerances, food allergies, immune system upregulation typically, and eventually can lead to immune system depression, which ultimately would lead to autoimmunity, can also lead to other things in blood-brain barrier dysfunction can also be caused from leaky gut or just intestinal inflammation or GI inflammation. So that's the severity. So that's when it's severe enough is when you actually have leaky gut. But the reality is I'm going to talk more about overall digestion for you. And your digestion starts from the time you place it to your mouth until it comes out. So we need to think about all aspects of digestion, from our salivary glands to our chewing. Please, please, please chew your food a lot more, especially your proteins, your meats, those things, because those proteins need to really be broken down by acids before they get into the small intestines or during the passage through the small intestines, but they really need to mix well with acid in the stomach. So increasing the surface area through proper chewing, masticating those proteins, those animal products, even our vegetables and things like that, but especially proteins, increasing that surface area because that's where the acid's going to come into play to break down those proteins into amino acids so they can be absorbed in that manner. We'll talk a little bit about those food intolerances or food allergies. It goes down to the esophagus. Again, you have a mucosal barrier there in the esophagus. If that wears out, if that's not healthy enough, there's things we'll be able to talk about in ways we could improve esophagus lining and health, which we'll talk about ways you can improve every single mucosal barrier health throughout your entire body, whether it be in your mouth, in your esophagus, your stomach, your large intestines, small intestines, into the vaginal canal as well. Because I know usually we have a lot of ladies on these talks. Yeah, I know that a lot of men don't worry too much about their health until it's really lost or their wives push them to actually pay attention to their health. So that's why men who marry a woman who's concerned about her health typically live a lot longer. So ladies, you got to drag those men along to maintain their health. So we know that manipulating the microbiome, and microbiome is more of a DNA factor. Microbiota is the actual bacteria. Typical testing is going to come into play with microbiome, so DNA testing, and you get a lot better read on what's in the digestive tract all the way up and through, not just in the lower colon, the anaerobes that can survive externally. That's where you would test microbiota. So it's just kind of a technicality, but that's what you're looking at when you're looking at the term microbiome rather than microbiota. Biota would be the actual bacteria, live microbiome, looking at more of the genome. of those. Managing disease with manipulating the microbiome. We know that we can manipulate it now. In the past, when you read back in the 90s to 2000s, early 2000s, up until 2010, 11, 12, in that region, that's where I start to see more of the science actually talking about being able to change our microbiome. They used to be able to kind of classify people into, I think it was like 5, maybe, I think, different types of guts, like you had mesomorph, the different body types, pear-shaped, apple-shaped, whatever. Well, they're trying to classify people into categories of their gut microbiome. And in reality now, we see that we can actually manipulate it. We can change it. We can change it through diet. We'll talk about that. Your microbiome, your gut health, both the gut bacteria, but not just the bacteria in your digestive tract, because they're connecting the gut bacteria to different disorders from ADHD, obviously your child's behavior. So I say, don't blame your child. Don't scold your child. You want to work with your child to be a good child, but the reality is this: sometimes the actions of your child may not be them. It may be the gut bacteria, or it may be the inflammation in the digestive tract, or the lack of absorption that's taking place in their digestive tract, leading to lack of production of proper neurotransmitters and things like that. So working with kids from ADHD to autism, having phenomenal effects and benefits for those kids through focusing on their GI, which a lot of these are immune driven. So if you're working on the GI, you're affecting the immune system as well. And this is an example right here. This is an example of a child dealing with ADHD. Things are all over the place. So they had 2 parasites. They had EPX, which it can be an indicator of parasites if there is no identifiable pathogen in the digestive tract. High EPX, eosinophil protein X, a sign of inflammation in the GI system. Fecal secretory IgA was elevated there, meaning the immune system was actually responding, which is a good thing because the immune system is strong enough to respond, but yet we know that the immune system was elevated, so we need to get rid of some of these things. So orthopathogenic fungus, yeast overgrowth, and then fecal fats were elevated as well, which then when we look at the blood-brain or the myelin, insulation around our nerve fibers, our brain food, the healthy fats being absorbed through the digestive tract. If they're defecating and pooping those out, ultimately they're not getting those things as building blocks for healthy neurotransmitters, as well as insulation around and to drive down in neural inflammation as well. So that's why you see a lot of times you'll see kids with ADHD supplementing with grass-fed butter, fish oils, things like that, improving or just kind of force feeding, in essence, more or hyper feeding those healthy fats into their diet can sometimes bring about cognitive improvements. So fats are really, really good for you, and you need to have healthy fats in your diet, but you also need to create healthy fats in your digestive tract. And we'll talk more about that in a minute or two. This is another one, long-term benefits of microbiota transfer therapy on autism spectrum disorder symptoms and gut microbiota. So they used to think it was genetic. There was even people saying that your genes, your genetic makeup actually determined whether you were going to have a certain gut bacteria microflora makeup. And they saw that it didn't really change, but they were just kind of observing people as they age, those types of things. We know that a breastfed home birth baby has some of the highest microbiota diversity, microbiome diversity. In this, just proving that the gut types is a myth and fallacy, that you can change it, is the fact that they basically washed the slate clean. They took antibiotics, they used laxatives, and then they used in alkalizing. They took basically like Tums, I believe. I forget which thing. It was basically an acid suppressant. I believe maybe a proton pump inhibitor, suppressing acid production in the upper GI and the stomach, and then taking capsules of that of transfer, basically taking a healthy donor's feces and their poop and encapsulating it, and then having these children and these individuals with autism, having them actually swallow those capsules. If you ever go through that treatment, just remember it's a capsule to swallow. It's not a chewable. Yeah, bad joke. Okay. Anyways, this was my joke as well. Wellness Way. I'm like, come on, we do a lot of liquid extracts, liquid elixirs, tinctures. Tinctures are far stronger than your powdered forms because it doesn't take the breakdown effects. It's absorbed more readily and quickly, and you can get gram dosages, more of a true Eastern medicine type Chinese medicine, which Chinese medicine been using these for, hundreds, thousands of years, these herbal medicines, and we're not. So we use a lot of liquids. So anyways, this is my joke was, we're coming out with the new feces extract. No, we're not. That takes you need to do the right testing and things like that because you don't want to transfer pathogens. But in that study about the children with autism, they had several bacteria that they felt that were like, those are the ones that, like, if we get those, we see a higher prevalence of autism in children that have a decrease in the number of certain bacteria. And by doing this full-on transplant, they did see improvements in cognitive and speech and different measurements. This was long term. Some of these children sustained it after. Then that was actually the study that I just referenced, was a 2-year follow-up to an original study. So they did 8 weeks, I believe it was, in the first study, and then they followed up 2 years later, and they saw substantial improvements still sustained and noted by the parents of these kids. So you can change their microbiome, which then can alter the effects downstream in our immune system, in our neurology. But here's kind of an overview. This is a different, just kind of like, this is where I would want to say, hey, let me change your mindset and the way you think about your health and the way you approach things. Because what I'm seeing is the world in our society, in a subpopulation of people right now, is going in a healthier direction, but we're utilizing a lot of concepts that are more mainstream medicine concepts in the way they think. See, the reality is we see like functional medicine and people using herbs as a drug rather than using a drug, which is typically going to be very bad for you. If you were to say, and what I tell people, like, it's tough for me to use some of these examples, but I think people can understand it. And until you're where maybe I'm at, you know what? Going to the emergency room can save your life, and having somebody administer a pharmaceutical, yeah, it could save your life. But the reality is, in my spirit and my soul and my mindset and where I'm at, I'm like, God, I want you to show me everything that I would possibly need before I even get there. I mean, using, like in the Bible, it talked about using gall. They offered it to Jesus before he went on the cross, and it was something to numb him. He didn't want to. He wanted to fully experience what was necessary to die for your sins and my sins. So he needed to fully experience that. He didn't want to dull his senses going to the cross. It was a punishment, and by taking a drug, he would have not fulfilled that full punishment maybe. So there was herbs to help with pain. I mean, so there's tons of things out there that we could use instead of pharmaceuticals. I'm always at the point where I'm like, I don't want to say that we need pharmaceuticals, but sadly, our society and our systems right now don't have these herbs built into practice and use to where we wouldn't need a pharmaceutical. But the reality is, I don't care what's going on. I believe God's provided, and there's an herb out there. There's a medicine he's provided for you. What I tell people is, get out there in the wilderness, into the wild, into nature. Things that God created, he's provided, and if his provisions in the Bible is true, guess what? Those provisions are out there. We just need to figure out, what is the medicine God created for me to be utilizing right now in my time of life so that I can heal, I can be fully healthy. So, but here are the two biggest systems. And if I broke them down into two systems that are going to regulate and basically control everything else, it's your nervous system and it's your immune system. And there are physical traumas, there are mental stresses, and there are toxins that are going to be neurological activators and neurological basically break down your nervous system. They're going to harm, they're going to deteriorate your nervous system. So you need to take care of those. One is going to be spinal traumas. Spinal traumas are one of the easiest ways for you to disrupt and dysregulate your autonomic nervous system. And so correction of the spine is crucial for many individuals. I see, I had IBS, so I had actually an intestinal issue, which most people would be like, hey, go to a chiropractor for an intestinal issue. But IBS is a neurological issue issue. It's not actually a true intestinal issue. The symptoms of the problem in my body, that neurological disruption, was because of my scoliosis, ultimately leading to neurological imbalances, scoliosis, leading to neurological imbalances and stresses affecting the nerves and nerve pathways going out to my colon and digestive tract. So I go 2-3 days without bowel movements. I deal with severe intestinal pain and cramping. I'd sit on the pot for 30 minutes at a time. It was hot wing night on Wednesdays with my dad, and I'd literally go and eat the hot wings. I loved them. And I would be the guy that just dipped them in the Frank's Red Hot or Tabasco sauce. But I'd be on the floor in the bathroom with a pillow and blanket, sleeping at night after Wednesday nights because my stomach hurt so bad. But correction of my scoliosis ultimately led to a resolution of my IBS, and now I can go easily. So, and then from there, looking at other aspects of the health. Health is multifaceted. You need to realize that there's never one single silver bullet. And I highly recommend that people don't search out one single herb to cover up a symptom. Immunological causes as well: infections, allergens, medications, metals, food toxins, autoantigens. We should put metals/adjuvants because of vaccinations, lending to immune activation and chronic immune activation through glial cells in the brain because of aluminum adjuvant deposition into the brain as well. So your nervous system is going to communicate through neurotransmitters, which is going to cause responses, which can go over and cause immune cytokine responses and disrupt the immune system. And then from the neurotransmitters, you're going to have immune activation, then you're going to have endocrine or hormonal activation. And the immune system is going to affect through cytokines and communication pathways. It's going to affect your hormones, and it's going to affect your nervous system. You're going to have responses from that. And those are secondary systems. So when you have your hormones affected, ladies, the reality is you need to look back towards what is causing the stress. Is it mental stress? Is it traumatic stress? Is it toxins, biotoxins? And you could throw in there that not all toxins are directly neurologically affecting, but there are some that are hormonally affecting the body. But there are people that are exposed to those hormonal toxins, but yet they're not dealing with the hormonal issues. And ultimately, you got to look back to immune, inflammation, nervous system. What are the stressors that are reducing the capability of you being able to filter out and process and eliminate those hormonal toxins and those responses? And then it's going to be activation of these chemical messengers contribute to disease process, pathology. So that's the overview. Really look back to those two systems for the key elements of how to resolve health issues. And I don't care what it is. Those are the key elements to look for and look into. Leaky gut action steps, 72 hours. And again, I'm going to say leaky gut just because the title of the talk, but the reality is it's intestinal health. So that's what we're talking about. 72-hour fast. The reason about 72-hour fast, and I'm not saying do that tomorrow, and it's not necessarily those 5 steps are not going to be in any specific order. All of them are important. We're just listing them off. I'm just going to go through a quick and simple one. Prolonged fasting can actually regenerate our immune system. And again, the immune system being one that will affect your gut health, and your gut health affecting your immune response and immune expression. Immune health. So, but 72-hour fast, you have your gut lining is going to be replaced about every 72 hours. So it's ironic that 72-hour fast is actually when you're going to start to regenerate a lot of cells. Your body starts to break down and basically kill off or trigger apoptosis, programmed cell death in cells that are not as healthy as others. So you're basically thinning the herd out because, you're only as fast as everybody around you. So the reality is 72-hour fast is one. And obviously liquid, making sure that you're consuming water, staying hydrated. I definitely have to recommend that you need somebody to coach you through that and walk you through a proper fast. If you're at the level of health where you feel comfortable and you've done some short fasts, those types of things. This idea of intermittent fasting, if you skip lunch or breakfast and lunch and you eat once a day, you're not really truly intermittent fasting. fasting, you're not going into a true fast. You have some effects on your metabolism. You're especially affecting insulin sensitivity, which is phenomenal for your body. You're having a lot of beneficial effects. But when you look at true fasting, you want your digestive tract to completely clear. So if you are eating proteins and things like that, it take roughly 24 hours for some people to break down. 72 hours or a intermittent fasting quote, that one meal a day or 18 hours of no eating and no consumption of caloric intake, you're not really getting to that point where you've cleared everything out and you're truly into a fast where your digestion is at a rest. So that's why 72 hours is really where I say that's when you're truly getting to a true fast. Okay. So get digestion right. Digestion is so important because the reality is it starts all the way up the chain. And if your digestion tract, if your digestive system is healthy enough, a lot of the food sensitivities that people have wouldn't be an issue because you wouldn't be getting to the point where you'd have this exposure or absorption and basically contact with these proteins that would activate our immune system if we were breaking them down appropriately with acid. And go ahead and comment for me, a couple people, anybody. What is the primary role of the acid in your stomach? Probably the most important role. And I'll keep talking, and then I'll go back to it, and I'll look at chat in a little bit. I'm going to have you guys kind of participate with me. So what do you think the primary role of the acid is? Probably one of the most important roles. Who said it? Kill germs. The first person to comment, Lauren. Phenomenal. It is. It's to sanitize. It really is. You need to be able to sanitize things before. Otherwise, we would be dealing with so many pathogens, so many viruses, so many bacteria that could be pathogenic. E. coli we're really around it all the time. And the reality is, if somebody has healthy acid production, a lot of these people that are getting E. coli from Chipotle's lettuce and everything else, they're getting it because they're taking Tums, they're taking antacid, they're taking proton pump inhibitors that block the ability for your the cells of your stomach to be able to produce the acid. So that's really where it comes from. Secondary, going to be breaking down, especially those proteins and things like that. So, and your fats, emulsifying fats. So proteins are made up of amino acids. So here we go. So proteins, you shouldn't actually be getting any type of protein absorption into the GI, through the GI, unless you had a true leaky gut, or you have an inflamed gut that has some protein absorption there, but you should be breaking all these proteins down into amino acids, and then they're absorbed like Lego pieces. You tear it apart and then you rebuild those proteins internally. So one of the best ways to improve that aspect, probably one of the only supplements I'll ever say, and it can be a food or it can be a supplement. Use food for your medicine. Or if you hate apple cider vinegar, you can't stand the flavor, Wellness Way has got your back. That's why we ended up going with apple cider vinegar capsules, is dried apple cider vinegar, and betaine HCl. It's going to increase the acid and help you break down those proteins. If you know you're going to go out for a big old steak dinner or something like that as like a vacation meal and treat, you know what? I would definitely be taking apple cider vinegar and sipping on that tablespoon roughly for an average size 150, 200 pound person. If you weigh less than that, a half tablespoon or so. But those things are going to help you digest. We joke around in Wellness Way. It's like, hey, if you don't like apple cider vinegar, you can't stand the taste, but yet you're not breaking down proteins, and that's identified on stools. Well, then guess what? It's a lot cheaper for apple cider vinegar, but we appreciate you paying us to encapsulate it for you. So, but we got your back with that. It's not about what you eat. It's about what you digest and absorb. That is so, so important. This is crazy. I must be surrounded because I got two computers. I must be surrounded by EMFs or something, because if I touch my computer, I'm getting static electricity, or it's because I don't have my shoes on and my socks are rubbing on the carpet. I wonder, because I keep getting it and it hits my ears too when I do it. Oh, man. Yeah, I need to be grounded. That's what I need. From now on, I need to bring my grounding mat in here. And so whole nother ball game. Get outside barefoot on the grass. Obviously know that you're not going to step on thorns or glass or sharp objects, but get out there and ground, get away from EMFs and computer screens and your cell phones and everything else. So let me look at this patient's chart real quick. So this is an example of one of the tests we do through Genova, and Wellness Way has a specific test that they've kind of worked with getting the cost down for patients, as well as going through and specifying what we want to see on these stool tests. It's what you absorb. So if you look, we've got products of protein breakdown. They're not breaking down. They're not absorbing their amino acids well. They're not breaking things down efficiently. So that's a lot of times through putrefaction and things that are being created by bacteria that's breaking down the protein rather than the acid in your digestive tract. So this individual, obviously apple cider vinegar would be beneficial. Again, the hydrochloric acid, making sure that they're not taking Tums or proton pumps inhibitors, getting away from those things. And if they have something like acid reflux and things like that, well, then you know what? We're going to supplement with something like marshmallow root, aloe vera, or chamomile that's going to help. And it's probably especially chamomile that's going to help in producing more of that mucosal barrier. Really cool scientific study on that in a minute. So we're going to improve that. We can take digestive enzymes. You can use things like turmeric and things that are going to help with that protein degradation and breakdown. Turmeric is a phenomenal herb for medicine. If you're going to use it for medicine, use it on an empty stomach. There is a level of fat in there, and people say that. I just had a patient ask me about reading about you need like a fat transporter, and that's where they are liposomal turmeric and everything like that. But the reality is, yeah, you might get a little bit more, but when you combine turmeric, I combine the two elixirs that I carry in my office is one through Wellness Way. It's a turmeric elixir. You get multiple grams per dose, and then I mix it with fenugreek because fenugreek is going to increase the bioavailability by about 45 times. Really cool scientific study on that. And that's not with any fat transporters. So, and I haven't really seen anything better than those things within the period of evidence. And then granted, I've not read every single study. So if somebody has something better, then I'd love to read it. And then there is an effect with black pepper. As long as you're not allergic to black pepper, this is just kind of giving you some tidbits of information to help yourself. And this turmeric is more like your strong anti-inflammatory. It does have beneficial effects in the GI to help with inflammation, but it can be kind of a burning kind of because it can break down protein. So if you have true ulcers in the stomach, which then I would go towards licorice. Licorice is really good for ulcers. Marshmallow root would be really good for ulcers. Aloe vera would be really good for ulcers. And then after you heal those ulcers, then incorporating more of that apple cider vinegar and things like that to help produce more acid. A lot of people with acid reflux are actually dealing with an alkalized environment in their upper GI, in their stomach. I had a woman actually have a doctor, as they did a scope, she requested, per her knowledge, which was really cool because she was one of the first patients that I realized knew about this, but they can do a litmus, basically test the acidity in the digestive tract. She was very alkaline, so she didn't get better with Tums. She didn't get better with protein pump inhibitors, the purple pill, whatever. She didn't get better with drugs, and they're like, keep taking them. She took them for like over 2 years, and her problem was a too alkaline environment once she got off the protein pump inhibitors and then started supplementing and using herbs to heal the GI, and then literally producing more acid now with bitters and things, and no more problems. So the other thing is elevated. This was a child, and this child was actually dealing with ADHD. So the one that I already showed you, the first part of the chart and lab tests on this child. So the 94.9, the little black dot all the way to the right-hand side on short chain fatty acid. This would be the lowest bar there. That lowest bar we're looking at elevated. If that comes up really high, that's oftentimes a marker of SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And again, that goes back to acid production. SIBO is more of an issue with acid production, poor acid production, than it is like the foods you're actually eating. So you can help starve them, but then they're even saying now, and I see conversations, and those haven't seen the science on it. Sounds really neat and yes, bacteria will morph, mutate basically, and change their ability to move around. They'll grow flagella and be able to swim basically, and they'll move up the GI to try and get more food if you start to do fasting and things like that with SIBO. That's the conversation out there and the theories. And I'm like, yeah, bacteria are going to do everything they can to survive. But in the small intestine, you really need to have that acid production to wash away the bacteria in the small GI. So is it okay to take ACV if I have loose stool issues and no gallbladder? Yes, I would say it is very, very beneficial. Yiska, Miss Anderson, with a gallbladder removal, we do have a supplement. It is a combination of ox bile and some other bile stimulators. So it's going to stimulate the liver and production of bile. So that is one situation where it's like, hey, you need to take a supplement for the rest of your life. And the reality is, I could show you gallstones gone on x-ray in individuals under Wellness Way Care, because you start taking apple cider vinegar, you start basically emulsifying and breaking down those gallstones. The reality is, what's very frustrating to me, and I was talking to another patient about this the other day, because I see and I care for several patients, but there is an herb. So Yiska, contact us. You can email us. You can text the phone number at the very end. And if you wanted a consult, or at least use my doctor's code, and then you can start getting that supplement. But you need your gallbladder. It's a crucial organ. Your cardiovascular risks go way up. Your nutrient deficiency problems go way up and increase when the gallbladder is removed. It is a crucial organ. Don't cut it out. Yeah, the pain stinks. It can cause severe pain because these stones are going through the bile duct, and as they go through, that they are going to hurt. And it's kind of like kidney stones, but it's happening in your bile ducts rather than in your urinary tract. So like kidney stones, though, your gallbladder can form these stones, and as they're passed, they give you pain and attacks, and they can become inflamed. So you need to break them down, and that goes back to liver health. It goes back to toxicity, ingestion, and other things, and proper digestion, all right? And proper bile flow and stimulation through bitter herbs. So you need those things. But no one would think that, if somebody went in with kidney stones, no one would be like, yeah, it's a great idea. Let's remove their kidneys where these stones are accumulating that are causing ultimately the pain. They'd be like, no, you're going to kill the person, because your kidneys are very much vital. You die without any kidneys. So, but we say, well, they can at least live a while longer without their gallbladder. So let's just remove their gallbladder, the source of where the stones are forming. But we're not really taking care of it. And even they've shown in spinal correction, people who have gone through spinal correction after failed gallbladder removal, failed ovarian removal, to resolve the abdominal, pelvic wall pain, intestinal pain, gallbladder pain, all these things. I've got a study from like the early 1900s that actually shows spinal correction, and these weren't even chiropractors, which is totally cool. It's they've been using spinal correction and exercises to resolve a lot of visceral organ system dysfunction for many, many years. So it would resolve these issues that surgery didn't work for. Go back to your question. Any hope for someone who, like me, who has 3 to 5 antibiotics a year for the past 14 years? Holy cow, Michelle. Michelle, any hope for you? Yes, there's absolutely hope. You're breathing, aren't you? So, and you can type that. So yes, there's absolutely hope. It just takes somebody who can understand what's going on, do the proper testing, and figure out why you don't need to be on 3 to 5 antibiotics I have a patient dealing with Crohn's disease, and she was kind of the same scenario. I don't think for 14 years, but a really, really long time, multiple years. And I'm like, if we had Helicobacter H. pylori infections causing ulcers and inflammation, and they're using all these antibiotics and it's not killing it off. And then I'm like, did you know licorice can actually substantially help with that, and then ultimately help with regeneration of cells within the upper GI, and then ultimately lead to the resolution of ulcers and the control and basically the control of H. pylori. And she'd never been told that, but it's in the peer-reviewed evidence. Really cool stuff. Courtney says, where is the best place to get herbs like marshmallow root? So marshmallow root, I have some here. Honestly, we source some of the best herbs in the world. And granted, there are other people producing great herbs that are organic. I know that Wellness Way takes care. I mean, we have a time limit on how long the California poppy has from harvest time to literally bottled. Like that, it's so specific so that we can get the medicine so precise with our herbs. We work with some of the best farmers in the world. And we source some of these. A lot of times we'll source them from their native growing habitats. So those things are important. 931-591-2010. That is the phone number. And I know that Ashley is going to have, she had put me up the slide at the very end that you could text us and get more information, but you can call us, you can email us, you can go through thewilddoc.com, message us if you're looking for some of these herbs and you want to start utilizing those. And I hope you guys do take away information to kind of run with some things on your own. And I look forward to helping a lot of you, because I know that a lot of you are going to be searching for more answers than what I can give here tonight. Mountain Rose Herbs, Annette says, actually, that is one of the best. Definitely organic. I love those guys. So good call there. I love you guys helping each other out. So with SIBO, diagnosed at 12 years old, THFA, could I try increasing stomach acid? Yes, I would highly recommend that, Amanda. Definitely. Apple cider vinegar, for sure. Probably looking at some licorice would be really good for that situation. I've been trying noni juice. What do you know about that? High antioxidant, great little berry. But it's not like the end all be all best. Like if you get a wild cup of blueberries, you're doing phenomenal with antioxidants. And the reality is these antioxidant scores alone, while there's value in understanding and knowing where these antioxidant scores, the ORAC scale is, the absorption and increase in antioxidants is kind of regulated by your body, because the reality is you don't want too many like if you just were like, I'm just going to consume all the antioxidants I possibly can, then you would actually neutralize the inflammation in your body and your immune system couldn't actually function. If you consume and your body didn't regulate the amount of antioxidants within the bloodstream. So this idea that antioxidants are everything is wrong. So Lucy, I will be touching on probiotic regimen for toddlers. I don't recommend a probiotic regimen for toddlers unless they've been on an antibiotic. Then without testing, I would say, yes, I'm going to advise a probiotic. We have a megabiotic. We get up to 100 to 200 billion live cells in that. So the megabiotic through Wellness Way is by far the best out there, powdered form. And in a situation like that, I may actually say, if you do anything like finding more alkalizing water or like an aloe vera to help soothe and coat, and drink lots of water, really flush that down really quickly when you take that powdered probiotic, so that it doesn't sit within the upper GI and acid. But again, you're going to produce more of that acid. There is always a level of acid in the upper GI in the stomach, but in essence, helping to calm down or neutralize that acid to some degree to help those probiotics viably get into the large intestine. That's what you're shooting for. You're shooting to get it down into the large intestines. We pregnant too, somebody says. Yiska says so, and gallbladder. Definitely want to be getting on the gallbladder complex through Wellness Way, because your nutrient deficiencies there are you don't want to be in that state while pregnant for neural development of your child and those things. I'll get back to questions in a minute. Let me keep fly through some of these things. Don't feed the deer. All right. Nutrition, get your nutrition right. Don't feed deer. How corn can be a killer. Now, what's funny to me is like I still hear GI specialists and people out there on blogs and different places saying that like we have these gut microbiome types. So you're a type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, and you're stuck with it. Once you're, through the toddler stages, what you got is what you get, and that's the rest of your life. But yet I'm like, nature doesn't do that. I mean, you don't feed. If you were to dump right now in the dead of winter, and it's less risk here in Tennessee, but you go up north where it's like they eat woody browse, and that's a primary thing because the corn is completely off the fields. There's no more corn on the ground. They've ate it out all right? And now they're eating twigs and brushy stems and things like that. If you were to dump a bag of corn out there, their microbiome has changed from when they were eating corn throughout the summer and fall, and it's changed into the dead of winter. Their gut bacteria is so different that they don't have the capability of breaking that down. It ferments. It literally can cause their stomachs to engorge and swell from fermentation, and they don't have the strong capability of belching like we do. Thank God we can burp because it can literally save your life. All right. If deer could burp, they'd probably not be dying. And I cut most of it out, but that is a pile of deer. They literally have a pile of deer all killed because somebody thought, I'm going to feed the deer, and they put corn out there. My point with this is we knew this with wildlife long ago, that you could kill them because their gut bacteria was literally changing seasonally to fit what they were eating. So your ability to change your microbiome is largely dependent on your nutrition, the foods you eat. If you don't eat the right foods and you take a probiotic, it doesn't really matter. All right. Now, I will say this. Some people are taking probiotics and they're like, I have to take a probiotic. Otherwise, I'm constipated. I don't go. Well, then you're not producing enough mucus, and it's more of a mucosal issue, a mucus issue. You need that mucosal blanket is actually what they call it. You need that mucosal lining there rather than a bacteria. And the bacteria live in a basically like a film liquid, petri dish type environment in your intestines. So you need that mucosal lining there. So that's when chamomile is going to be a lifesaver for you. If you're that person that needs the probiotic to go to the bathroom, because when you ingest the probiotic, it kind of like, the bacteria does what it's supposed to do. It helps you go to the bathroom, but then you poop it all out and you don't have it there. It's not living in there. It's not replicating well in there. You're basically in a state of deficiency within the microbiota within the digestive tract. So diet-induced dysbiosis, intestinal microbiota, effects of immunity and disease, your intestinal microbiome, what's in there, diversity is key there. That is why I tell people, like, I there's more reasons. If you can go to, it's like, I know, ladies, it's tough. We went through a hospital birth with my first son because of circumstances that were really more about our own communication and mistakes as a young couple. But you know what? I just told my wife, I'm like, I got a 5-year-old, I got a 3-year-old, and I got a 1-year-old. Ren just turned 1 yesterday. And Ren was born at Magnolia and Ren were both born at home, 2 different homes, 2 different types of environments and things like that. And then Amos was born in a hospital via C-section. It will be amazing if we see whether what we did for Amos was able to increase his microbiota diversity, his microbiome diversity to the point similar to the girls, because they show born in a hospital in a sanitary environment, especially through C-section, their guts can be cultured by bacteria that is actually supposed to reside on the skin, or even pathogenic type bacteria, antibiotic resistant bacteria is often residing in the intestines of children who are born via C-section. So one of the things we did to improve the microbiome of my son was we actually did probiotics. We helped it because obviously Anna was IV antibiotics. That's what their protocol is with a C-section. So we did probiotics. We ate fermented foods. We just ate as healthy as we possibly could. All our fruits are vegetables and things like that. Tons of those cruciferous vegetables, resistant starches, things like that. Building up her microbiome again. And then we were doing vaginal swabs, getting those bacteria that are going to culture the child as they pass through the vaginal canal when they're born vaginally, which is very healthy. So obviously antibiotics, obviously C-section, all those things, hospital birth, you're cultured by your environment. So these home births are much, much more environmentally friendly for what you're going to colonize your child's microbiome with. So I can't encourage you enough to do a home birth. And I am not a woman. I don't have to birth. So I can't understand at times the fear that some women go through. I will never have to experience that level of possible anxiety and fear. And again, the fear is oftentimes driven through the medical models, idea that pregnancy and labor is some sort of medical procedure now. The reality is, ladies, you are beautifully and wonderfully made. You are fantastic. You are wonderful. You are just, I'm in awe every time I look at my wife, in more ways than one. But the reality is, your bodies were made for this. You were designed specifically for this, bringing life into this world. So trust in your body and trust in the design that God gave you. But our microbiome affects our host immune responses. I would literally want to be like, you know what? I put it up there because it's in the study, but the reality is genetics make up such a small, and they even theorize, it's like 12%, I think they said in the study. But it's like your diet makes up and can change 60% of and then the other 30% or 20%, they said may be in the way you were born, raised, and different things like that. But again, to be able to see whether genetics have an effect on it. And they're taking these genetically altered mice and changing the diet, and it changes the microbiome, and it leads to non-obese mice in their future generations as well as themselves. And meanwhile, well, if genetics were the ones that determined your microbiota, that was an argument there. Everybody wanted to blame all genetics. So I'd almost like to say, just brush that aside, forget about that. And anyways, what you're going to do about it? There's a lot you can do about your health. You're not going to change the genetic code, but you can change the expression of that code, turning genes on and off constantly, day in, day out. And then it's going to affect your metabolism, going to affect your disease susceptibility, IBD, inflammatory bowel disease, diabetes, obesity, and other issues. Dietary factors, modes of delivery into your gut. So exposures, I like to say, listen, let your kids get outside and play. I highly, highly recommend, for multiple reasons, getting out and actually consuming food straight from the earth, straight from the tree. There are bacteria and microbes that you're going to be exposed to when you pluck and pull and eat things straight from nature. Highly, highly recommend having at least a small garden without tilling it up at all, mulching it. And then even if it's, onions or something, a root vegetable that you're pulling up and then you're dusting off and you're consuming, all right, without sanitizing, without cleaning. There are benefits to that microbiota exposure. Plus, there's benefits to the carbon molecules that are created by the bacteria in the soils. And you can, bacteria in the soils as well as the fungus in the soil, the mushrooms. So create these compounds that are beneficial to your digestive tract health and sealing the gut. And we'll talk about that. And the stress would be as well. You can change your microbiota by the stress you're under. Mental stress can literally change the bacteria in your gut because it affects your cortisol levels. And they even show you have intestinal microbiota changes in depression and immune suppression through higher cortisol levels. And then if you can get the cortisol levels down, your immune system responds, your microbiota changes, then ultimately it leads to improvements in cognition and brain function, decreases anxiety and depression. So it's kind of this vicious circle for those individuals, but you need to look at all aspects and start helping the body compensate for a time period. And then you can actually change the gut as well, because sometimes they're stuck in a vicious cycle and they can't change their gut no matter how many probiotics and nutrition they change. Nutrition is pretty darn tough on almost any disease process, really beneficial. But in circumstances, you need to kind of help. So keto caution, all I'm going to say is keto diets, just be cautious with them because they can lead to endotoxemia, especially individuals eating keto diets that are consuming proteins that are coming from factory farms. That would be the big no-no. If you're going, you got to go organic on your meats, your animal products. They're bioaccumulators. So they're accumulating vitamins or they're accumulating toxins. One or the other, you better make sure that the animal is eating healthy and accumulating the vitamins and minerals and things that you would benefit from if you're going to eat that meat. And they're not accumulating the antibiotics, the pesticides, the herbicides, the chemicals, the metals, things like that from poor farming practices. But this is actually a lady that was on a keto. She's trying to lose weight. She's been on keto for months, not lost any weight. Her digestion isn't healthy. She had elevated fecal fats and butyrate, short-chain fatty acid, pathogenic bacteria, and beta-glucuronidase. This one was dealing with hormonal problems, for one, and she was dealing with depression. And I'm going to explain both of those with a stool test. You know, people will come to me all the time and consult with me, and they'll have been going to functional med docs and other doctors that look at this from a medical model, and they say, okay, you have these hormonal symptoms, then let's test your hormones. And she had elevated estrogen levels, and her ratios were off. So what they do, they put her on a progesterone cream and a testosterone cream. That's what they did. I'll show you the list of tests they did here in a minute. But it's all here in our GI and gut. You know, Hippocrates said, look well to the spine for the cause and prevention of all disease. And as a chiropractor, I love the fact that he identified the importance of the spine. It's kind of the switchboard. It's going to tell you which organ systems are going to fail the soonest and the quickest. Mine was my GI because of my cervical or my lumbar spine and my pelvis and sacrum being out of alignment. If it's up in the upper thoracic spine, it's going to be cardiovascular risk. If it's in the mid cervical spine, it's going to be thyroid problems. You know, so you look to those areas of the spine incorrect. And then he also said, you know, look, let food be thy medicine and medicine thy food. All right. So in really talking about herbs there, the medicine should be the herbs should be your medicine, and they should be in essence their foods, and they're incorporated into your foods, into your daily life. Oregano on it. I'm cautious with oregano oil when you're trying to kill pathogenic bacteria because it can really wipe out a lot of good bacteria. That's something I'll throw in since I mentioned it. But you should be eating a lot of herbs. You should be cooking with tons and tons of different herbs, just cycling through them. So let's take a look. Why would she have elevated estrogen? The very bottom thing, the bottom bar, 4014 beta-glucuronidase. She's in that upper quartile of beta-glucuronidase in the healthy population. Well, what does beta-glucuronidase do if it's in elevated concentrations within the GI, which can be from a lack of fiber in your diet, and it can be overproduction from pathogenic or different bacteria overgrowth. Beta-glucuronidase is going to cleave. So your body, your liver is going to process estrogens for detoxification. You have to, in essence, kind of detox from estrogen. And your liver packages it and creates a molecule. Estrogen's bound within it, puts it in the bile, goes in the gut, and then through combined of good healthy bacteria, good bowel movement frequency, bile flow, and then fiber, you're going to bind that up and you're going to excrete it. But beta-glucuronidase is actually going to cleave it. It's going to break apart that molecule, and then it's going to free estrogen. When you free estrogen, it can be reabsorbed, and it recycles into the body. So there's her elevated estrogen problem in essence, or one major contributing factor to it. But not only that, she is so deficient in her short-chain fatty acids. So just above that, we're looking at that column there, the gut microbiome metabolites. All right, metabolic short-chain fatty acids, SCFAs. All right, the N-butyrate concentration is very low. Acetate was high, and then propionate was mid. But overall, low on those short-chain fatty acids overall in those ones that are very important. Guess what? The role of short-chain fatty acids in the microbiota gut-brain communication can affect and cause the lack of these things. And the way you're going to get this is insoluble fibers that you cannot break down. All right. She wasn't eating those things. So, you know what? I told her, eat a green banana. You know, if you want to lower the sugar and you're worried about that, then eat a green banana, which is actually going to be better. Cook some potatoes, then let them cool. After they've cooled, it becomes more of the intestinal microbiota, the bacteria in your gut. It's their job to break it down. And as they poop out after they digest the fiber, their defecating material is a short chain fatty acid. So that's where I don't like the little wheat sign because I stay away from wheat and gluten and things like that, especially the GMO and sprayed to dry it. But the gut bacteria is going to digest those fibers, and then it's going to excrete short-chain fatty acids or defecate short-chain fatty acids that are extremely beneficial. They affect your body in a neurological pathway manner, affecting your vagus nerve, which is going to be extremely important for for depression, anxiety, for relaxation, for sleep, for the control of the immune response in terms of an anti-inflammatory, neurological stimulatory effect towards the immune system. The vagus nerve activates a calming effect on the immune system and anti-inflammatory resolution of an immune response. So that vagal nerve is extremely important for autoimmune conditions, humoral pathways, other immune pathways. The lack of short chain fatty acids can break down and cause problems, permeability in the blood-brain barrier, and tight junctions there, again, leading to things in that box up above: anxiety, depression, stress, memory, learning, neurogenesis, the development of a healthy brain in your children, neuroprotection. If food intake, learning memory, I mean, just look at all these things. So short chain fatty acids are absolutely critical. They're strongly anti-inflammatory. They're going to help with that mucosal, and they could actually be all you need to heal leaky gut, in essence, is eating things that are resistant starches and this study has a lot of lists and stuff, but incorporating resistant starches, if you start Googling that, you'll find tons of stuff. All right. And this is another one. Somebody asked me about probiotic regimens, those things. Why am I not a big fan of probiotic regimens is this right here. This woman has an overgrowth of several bacteria. She is not lacking bacteria. So that idea that everybody needs to take a probiotic, that is wrong. That is harmful. And especially if you have SIBO, taking a probiotic would make the matter worse. You're going to get worse. So I will go back to questions. Let me get through some of this stuff. This was her blood panel work from another doc. And again, a doc using herbs or supplements, typically isolated nutrients and bioidenticals instead of drugs, which is like, hey, you're better. You're not as harmful, but you're not getting the root causes. So again, testing the right things, not just testing downstream things. So in essence, they were testing things downstream from improper immune pathways, improper neurological activation in health, improper hormonal pathways driven by a poor GI system. So that's what, and I mean, she spent like $1,000 in testing. I mean, and yet it's like, okay, now you're deficient in these nutrients. Let's take this. Oh, you have high homocysteine. Let's take a B vitamin. And granted, to get somebody out of a crisis situation, those things can be beneficial, but they're not ultimately causative. Those are not the cause. So picture a leaky gut due to gluten. In essence, there's research showing us now that gluten is going to cause some level of inflammation in the digestive tract, breaking down those tight junctions. And the hyper green color is your tight junction. So those are the blue circles are like the nucleus of the cell. The cell is the whole, that black area. And then the cell wall is going to be the hyper green lines there. And everything on the left would be one, gluten. Another one is going to be glyphosate and gliadin. And then the use of lignite extract, which is from peat moss and different things like peat. It's from soil decay, and bacteria generate these things, these carbon molecules. These things are in healthy soil, and we don't really have healthy soil that we're farming from. Even organic farming isn't always healthy soil. So that's where I highly recommend consuming things even in a small home garden, root vegetables, back to mulching it, thick mulch. All right. I'm talking sometimes 6 inches to a foot thick of mulch, and then leaving it decay and just keep adding mulch and compost on top, letting those worms, those bacteria, and even those mushrooms grow in there. And obviously don't eat the mushrooms unless you know exactly what they are. You're going to get and improve those tight junctions. So those cell to cell barrier formation, that wall in your gut. And gluten-free doesn't mean healthy, all right, folks? Hopefully everybody understands that. Some of these things are healthy and some of these things are not healthy, all right? So they may not be affecting the gut-brain barrier or the the intestinal permeability effect, but they're not always healthy. They can have insulin effects and other problems. So food allergy testing, there's IgG or IgE testing, and then there's IgG. IgG is going to be an antibody internal. It's not going to be a histamine mediated response like IgE. IgE immune allergies are going to be like the anaphylactic, like the Will Smith on Hitch, when he blew up like a balloon from like, I believe, a shellfish or something, right? Yeah, that's this movie. All right. So, that's the IgE, food allergy IgGs. Those are going to be inflammatory mediators caused by IgE antibodies, chronic inflammatory ailments, constipation, Crohn's disease, diarrhea, eczema, flatulence, irritable bowel syndrome, migraines, and more of an IBD there too. With the IgG, even this one, I'm like, kind of pick that apart because more IBS is a stress response, neurological, and the IBD, inflammatory bowel disease, is going to be more of a so irritable bowel, inflammatory bowel. Those are the differences there. Migraines, obesity, psoriasis. So after several hours to 3 days after the food is taken in, an IgG blood test, food allergy testing. So here's some food testing that we do. It's really simple. I see people come in with all kinds of complicated food allergy testing. We literally contract and work with immunolabs, and we were like, listen, we want something so simple we could literally hand it to our patients. I have patients get double charged and stuff like that, other doctors, because then they have to like go in with these complicated blood samples and go through all the foods and what's this fraction of a percentage and these bars and everything like that. And I'm like, listen, you basically don't eat the red and you eat the blue. It's pretty darn simple. So we can really just kind of like a tool. The patients pay for this. They go through, they send the lab, the blood work off, they get it back. We hand it to them. So we don't even have to necessarily sit down with them all the time. Now I'll sit down and go through the blue and talk about their disease process, their condition, what they're dealing with, their hormonal problems, whatever. And I'm going to categorize foods that would be more beneficial. This is the same person though. And what do you guys see? See that the food allergies increased after they had eliminated. Now that can come about through different stressors. For some people, it could be they ended up getting talked into an antibiotic because they had strep throat or something like that. Echinacea, phenomenal, kill strep throat. Turmeric mixed in with Manuka honey, phenomenal for it. So there's ways around using antibiotics for just about anything. So, the person wasn't in a state of immunodepression. Their immune system wasn't strong enough. They didn't respond as strongly to things. And then when they went through the testing months later, they had more. Some people get upset about that. But yet I'm like, listen, your immune system is stronger. That's actually good that it's stronger. It's actually can respond to these things and tell us you're allergic to them. So another person, their food allergies went down after a time period. So some can go up, some can go down. And it doesn't mean that we did anything wrong. It just means your immune system may have been depressed before. Sometimes we can know that beforehand. Albizia, if you're going to cheat on your foods, if you're going to eat inflammatory foods, like, yes, me and my family are not perfect. I don't know how we get these like weird. How is somebody drawing on I've seen that twice and then it like deletes. It's crazy. I have no clue how it's doing that. But anyways, who cares? So Albizia it's a mast cell stabilizer. So it's going to help in reducing histamine responses. So a lot of allergic diseases driven through histamine, Albizia is like your best friend. All right, you can take it regularly for that purpose, but also if you cheat on your foods, this is our go-to. We get travel-sized bottles. We take it on vacation. We take it with us. If we go out to eat, my family has it. And yes, we're not perfect. We eat pizza now and then. God forbid, I know I'm a hypocrite. But the reality is Albizia is my antidote God provided for me. And still, why am I does everybody else see that like scribble mark? Do you guys see this yellow scribble mark? Like I have no clue. And I haven't touched anything. No. Like that's weird. It came up earlier and it disappeared earlier. So I don't know why it did that. Oh, well, look through it. Food allergies and infantile autism, 1995 paper, testing food allergies, IgGs and IgMs. There's several, but IgGs are where we test for. Those, I mean, it lowers that inflammatory immune response. It's going to help these kids lower inflammation in their brain. It's going to help with them getting to a state where they can start to regenerate and heal. You got to get rid of the cause of the inflammation, the immune activation. You got to get rid of those, and then you got to get the child time to heal. It takes time for these kids to recover. So insufficiencies, it's not going to be like, oh, you eliminate them and 2 weeks later they can talk now. It's you need to give them time to develop. Those things can be inflammation. The immune drivers can be inhibiting the development and progression, and they're just stalled out. They're stopped. Once you get rid of those things, then they can start to develop, and that takes time. So hang in there, keep doing your best for your kids, and you can recover them. You really, really can. Yes, it's God forbid it's not everybody that has such drastic and just complete recoveries, but you got a healthier child in the long run. You love that child, take care of them. You're going to have a healthier child dealing with autism no matter what. Insufficiency. So this is a child dealing with autism. So pathogenic fungi overgrowth, protein. And this is why a lot of autistic children actually benefit a lot from digestive enzymes. A lot of parents will note the digestive enzymes were something they could incorporate, and they saw this would be a patient that don't just give a kid a probiotic, and he had the bacteria in high amounts, like top amounts, overgrowth almost, of the things that they said help with autism. So you got to realize, you got to test, you got to know what's going on within this person. What do they specifically need? Another individual, this is actually a lady dealing with EPX. Yes. Okay. So this is an individual dealing with diabetes and hormonal problems, severe weight gain, and inability to lose weight. Severe EPX was off the chart. Fecal secretory IgA was extremely high. Fecal fats was extremely high. Beneficial bacteria, and a lot of times when the fecal fats are high, you're absorbing starches and sugars. You're not absorbing fats. So that's going to affect your metabolism. Beneficial bacteria was extremely low. Short chain fatty acids. So the short chain fatty acids can be because of poor diet and dietary choices. And it can also be because you don't have the bacteria there to be able to create the short chain fatty acids. So it can be both diet and a lack of. So in this individual, we're going to supplement with a probiotic. We're going to incorporate a lot of nutritional changes. And again, I think I didn't finish the thought earlier, that it just popped back in my brain, that when you do take a probiotic, you have to feed the probiotic. You have to feed that digestive tract appropriately. And if you don't, that beneficial bacteria isn't going to continue to live and survive. So, but we got to get the inflammation down. And this is a situation where just going through questionnaire with this lady, I'm like, you've got to look into testing for mold. You've got to, and not necessarily testing, like if it's human, if you know there's periodic mold in your home, you've got to start doing what you can. If they can't move, we're like, dehumidifier. You start using apple cider vinegar in your shower and spraying it on the mold. You can even use hydrogen peroxide on that to help neutralize some of it. The reality is mold is something that is all the way to, it's a biblical issue. Like, you got to get away from it. Peace lily is a phenomenal, probably one of the best plants. I told this lady, I'm like, in your bedroom, can you please like plant and buy like 10 peace lilies and plant and put them all over your room, so that you're not sleeping in a humid, moldy environment, because they filter out a lot of mold spores. So peace lily is great. Again, you can see massive elevated levels of fatty acids there. So wreaking havoc. Her immune system at least is responding, but yet she's going to go into catastrophic failure eventually. And one of her biggest things was diabetes and weight loss problems. This lady here, now this is a different situation with diabetes, and we can actually see in the top when the pancreatic elastase up there was very low. She's in the red. Her pancreas is failing, so this indicates to us with a stool test, we can say we need to supplement with an herb called gymnema, which is going to help in regenerating beta cells. Now, in parents, if you're a parent out there and you're like, how do I, God forbid my child was ever diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and they're in that honeymoon stage, I would be like, get a bottle of gymnema and be taking that like crazy. because it can help in regenerating and protecting beta cell destruction. So, and it can help the beta cell regeneration. So, phenomenal herb for diabetes. But again, this is all stuff we find out through stool. So you can find out many, many different things through proper stool testing. Lipids, fats, the fecal secretory IgA, even though it's in the middle there, inflammation, immunology, calprotectin was high, but the fecal secretory IgA was non-detectable. And that was when the child with autism as well before this lady. The fecal secretory IgA, when it's way down there, we want it up a little bit. I like it like in the higher first, second quartile is where I like to see it. But the non-existent can create a definite risk of susceptibility to infections, cancers, things like that, because you do not have a strong barrier immune system. And your IgA immune response is actually non-inflammatory. And so when we talk about like flu and things like that, vaccinations go against everything our body was designed to do. By injection, they're automatically bypassing our mucosal membrane, so we don't promote a healthy IgA immune response within the lung tissue. So in our lung tissue, in terms of the flu, and again, this is off topic, but it has to do with your mucosal barrier health. And that's kind of what leaky gut goes back to. It goes back to the healthy mucosal lining, mucosal barriers. So in the lungs, a healthy IgA, through expression of the IgA immune secretory IgA, neutralizes the virus externally in the lungs. Yeah, it's inside of your physical kind of body, chest cavity, but it's still externally because it's not within your bloodstream. It neutralizes these viruses before they even get into the body, and it's non-inflammatory, so it doesn't lead to tissue damage. But by vaccination, we cause an elevated IgG response, and we train the body to respond to influenza through IgG. And yes, you want IgG to some degree, but I would rather neutralize it outside the walls of my body without inflammation and tissue destruction. And the little bit that gets into my body, my IgG responses, okay, yeah, we're going to kill it off with inflammation, but there's going to be far less viruses that get in, far less inflammation and tissue damage. And guess what? I'm going to be far healthier because of it. But these vaccinations, they train IgG, they weaken the IgA, and ultimately it leads to an increase in risk of cytokine storm and death from influenza. So, another person with beta-glucuronidase, extremely high there, again, dealing with weight problems, elevated estrogen, makes you put on the weight around the thighs, midsection, those places. And of course, pear-shaped. She's like, that's exactly right. I'm like, we've got to get cruciferous vegetables into your diet, which is going to be one. We have a greens, several different greens in it, specifically ones that are going to work similar to like dim with an extract from broccoli sprouts, which is going to be great for another one, and fiber intake. Dietary changes, please just eat real food. Eat real food. Simple as that. Stop eating packaged, boxed, processed foods. Stay away from GMOs because not only the glyphosate, but also the GMOs that are created into making their own pesticides like GMO corn. Journal of Clinical Nutrition Dietetics. This is again going back to the use of a supplement known as Restore, or now Ion Biome, that helps in restoring and healing from glyphosate. The other one was gluten. This one's identifying the tight junction health when affected by glyphosate. Dirty Dozen, environmental working groups, Dirty Dozen. These are the things you want to go organic on, the things that you can go kind of like cheat and save some money. The non-organic things, non-necessary for organic, are going to be these. Now, I would almost say like there's a lot of sweet corn that's not GMO. And a lot of people just grow it healthy-wise, but you got to ask the farmer. But it is sweet corn per se. But again, it's something that's hard to digest too. But all those things, same thing. Private papayas go non-GMO. So a few things on there that I kind of critique. But this is a supplement that can help if you can't eat directly from soil and things like that, which is one way to help it. I've got another one for you, even beyond just supplementing, but this is a phenomenal supplement that helps with so many things. I literally had one patient that we were working with her. We had her improved. Her personality was starting to come back. She was starting to do very well. This young girl was suicidal. When we put her on this, her mom was like, that was like the prayer answered. Like everything else was doing better. We were using herb, we were doing things, and this, we just had to heal her gut. And we hadn't even done any stool samples yet because they had done some in the past, didn't like the results from the protocols they'd used and things. And we did this, boom, and just phenomenal results. She literally like blossomed majorly. And she was a young teenager, I think 15, 16 years old, somewhere in there, but went from harming herself to suicidal ideation to no longer suicidal ideation and no longer harming herself. From that supplement was like it was like the one thing that just got her completely over that hump to finally be able to stabilize psychologically. So we can help these people. Let's do it. Apple-derived pectin modulates. And the way I do this and recommend it is to make your own homemade applesauce out of organic apples. Add some cinnamon in there as long as you're not allergic to cinnamon. Cinnamon is quite frequently a allergen for many people. But making your own applesauce, and it changes when it's heated. I like to advise people keep the peel in there, even though it's just not necessarily the greatest texture. But one way you can get around that is peel the outside, put them in a blender, boil the apples, and blend the peeling down to a pulp, and then add it back in last minute. And then you freeze it, or not freeze it, but you chill it cold, and then you eat it. And it helps with leaky gut. So it helps heal the digestive tract lining and resolve a lot of those tight junction barrier issues. So microbiome testing, and again, I covered a lot of this already, but you got to know what's in there, and you got to know if you need to put something in there, and you need to know when you don't need to put something in there, like a probiotic. Supplements for support. It would be the final one: bacteria, fungus, and parasites, intestinal bacteria, regulation, immune homeostasis. We have over 100 trillion bacteria in our digestive tract. Bacteriophages are actually and non-host derived immunity. So our immune system is more than what we do. It's our bacteria. It's even phages, which are viruses that infect and destroy bad bacteria. They're found in a mucosal membrane lining in our digestive tract and respiratory tracts. We have viruses living symbiotically. Not a lot of people realize this. We even have worms and parasites that can be symbiotic and beneficial. This is why they're using parasites to affect and stimulate the IgA immune system, to affect it and strengthen it. And many people have actually shown that children with autism can benefit from those things. They do a sterilized parasite. I've seen people go through those things. I had one guy spend tens of thousands of dollars on an attempt to try that with an autoimmune condition. His was primary skeletal, neurological, which was just phenomenal. The results we got with him with spinal correction, but he had gone through a ton of stuff. Pathogenic organisms is not necessarily one organism, but it's actually more of a pathogenic communities. So this is where nutrition is really going to come into play, is creating the proper community rather than just going in there and saying, hey, you have a bad bacteria, let's go ahead and take something that kills it. Because even herbs that kill off bacteria and can be used at times, and you want to be careful, especially children, you start going in there guns a-blazing and you start killing off a bunch of stuff, you can really wreak havoc with their immune system and cause a lot of just disruption in their psychology. So it's balance, it's diversity, fear, get away from the fear, get away from using these sanitizer things. I mean, we don't believe in the germ theory. We understand that germs are to live symbiotically with us in homeostatic state. So get rid of this stuff. But again, that's medicines just, they've caused just a fright of everybody. I literally go in Chipotle, they got the little, don't even touch it. It just motion activated, squirts you a nice hand sanitizer there. I'm like, nope, not touching it. I tell my kids, don't do it. It's poison. And then my kid goes in the bathroom and we tell him not to use the hair dryer. Just this is a Chipotle story. And we got in there, opened the door, and the guy didn't lock the door, but he was drying his hands. And my son literally looks at the guy and goes, "Dad, he's spraying poop on his hands." Because the hair dryer, that's how I told, not the hair dryer, but the air dryers in the bathroom. I like never use those. Tell my kid, that sprays poop on your hands. I had to explain it to him that there was poop molecules in the air. Anyways, all right. So I thought it pretty comical. My boy was telling somebody spraying poop on his hands. But yeah, it's getting late, folks. So it breaks down the different pathogenics if you can actually grow them in an aerobic environment. Most pathogens and different bacteria in the gut is anaerobic, so a lot of times they can't grow them. But if they can grow them, we can then test them against different herbs and things like that. Of course, they're going to give prescription agents because medical physicians use these tests. We never have to resort to it, and I've never seen anybody that we can't change their microbiome with herbs or with nutrition and things like that. So it can help us, help us identify things that are specific to maybe funguses, yeast, to the bacteria, and even if they can have, parasites, but they don't test with parasites because parasites are basically dead as soon as they come out. Those are the parasite. When we were dealing with parasites, we're more of a pathogenic type parasite. We're looking at the wormwood, which is a great bitter in itself, which calms the immune system too. It has a great inhibitory effect on the immune system if necessary. So we can use that in circumstances. Supplements for support. So again, go back through the ones like apple cider vinegar. If you've got your gallbladder removed, we talked about several. Licorice for upper GI inflammation, aloe vera for intestinal inflammation, and the mucosal, the protective mucus blanket. If you could have like a blanket you threw over, you could shield you from everything. You would want that cool blanket. It's kind of like that. I don't know if anybody's the one with the Hobbit, Lord of the Rings. There, I'm gonna reference Lord of the Rings here. When he gets that cool like cape type thing that's like a metal mesh. No, it was like a coat, wasn't it? It was like, yeah, it was kind of like, it protected him, and like it didn't matter. It stabbed him, wouldn't pierce. You want that protected mucus blanket everywhere in your body, from your lungs, digestive tract, throat, sinuses, vaginal tract, ladies. They've even got I know there's a lot of women. I think I've seen all women's names here, but women dealing with painful sex or irritation in that region, those things, dryness, they've actually shown that using water and letting it cool, but making strong teas out of chamomile and doing douches with it could actually substantially improve mucus generation. Helping with goblet cells. I believe it was goblet cells, wasn't it? Yeah. Intestinal goblet cells and others in the lungs as well. And so you get this mucosal blanket in there and helps. Now, if you're dealing with excessive mucus, chamomile wouldn't be your go-to, but if you're dealing with lack of mucus, absolutely beneficial there. So chamomile is one of the best. And I'm not talking about just chamomile tea is great. It's very beneficial, using it as a wellness-based maintenance level. But when you're looking at some of these major intestinal inflammation issues, you're going to want to go something where you can get multiple grams, which then you're talking about like thousands of bottles or thousands of packets of chamomile tea. So before I'll start to go through some of these questions, if anybody wants, and you got to jump off, time's sake, that kind of thing, if you text Leaky Gut to that number on the screen right there, 786-808-1302, you can request a consultation for us. We'll have one of my staff members reach out to you if you want information about herbs and things like that. Ashley, what's our doctor's code if somebody was wanting to just kind of start getting some of the herbs and stuff like that? Put in the comments, what is it? Tell me so I can say it out loud. She's got to look it up. But 5231 is the doctor's code. I try to give out tons of information out there to the public, help you guys just stay on path for yourselves. I really think about, healthcare should be more about creating independence in individuals. Sometimes you need somebody to lead you to a point where then they can kind of release you into the wild on your own. So if you need my assistance directly, I look forward to helping many of you. If you do start to go in this on your own and you're looking at, I do greatly appreciate, my family appreciates it, providing for 3 kids and a wife. It's very appreciative if you use that doctor's code when getting any of the herbs and things like that I've discussed. And if you do get them, I'll help you with dosages and things like that if you're purchasing them through the Wellness Way website store. So that doctor code referral is the very bottom where you punch that in, and then I do get a percentage of that. So, and I do thank you for all the support that everybody's, whether it be psychological support, encouragement, or financial, that everybody has provided over the years. So I'm way back up here. I got like 54 new messages that I haven't gone through, but I'm going to try and fly through this. My 3-year-old, Micah says, Mr. Palmer and Miss Palmer, 3-year-old with 9-year-old have been taking probiotics, prebiotics, immune support gummies in a couple weeks to help with constipation. I have some improvements. What is the best thing for constipation? I would go with, in that situation, aloe vera, chamomile. Just offhand, but I would definitely say, again, I'm going to say we test, we don't guess, so I could throw that out there and say, hey, try it, see what happens. Hopefully it helps, but testing, especially if they've got some, or chiropractic. I'll tell you, there are people that can't go to the bathroom and we adjust them and they literally can go to the bathroom within my office. They got to go to the bathroom. Yeah. Talk about, need to get an extra strength fan in the bathroom when that occurs. I'm going to try and increase the size to be able to read these questions here a little bit more. All right. Suggestion to heal gut after years of daily Miralax for constipation. Use L-carnitine, CoQ10 to get off of Miralax. So I would recommend in that situation trying to figure out really what's going on there. We're dealing with neurological, we're dealing with pathogenic stuff going on in there. But I would definitely recommend, Carmen, some testing for that. But again, go back to those, try the chamomile, things like that, mucosal membrane barrier health. It just depends on what's going on. Again, you got to figure out the root causes. Next one, iPad says, my husband has been taking Nexium forever. I don't like it. So marshmallow root would be a better option for him. Licorice or marshmallow root, aloe vera would be another one. Chamomile would be another one in those situations. So what that comes with instructions. I heard your office sells it. Would that come with instruction? No, I do recommend you can do like a simple consultation, just kind of one-on-one, 15, 30 minute. It's like $55 for a consultation. If you want some kind of personalized assistance there for a while. I assume everyone is different. Yep. I was hoping for noni would increase acid, but you are saying it's the main thing, Terry. Noni is more advertised as an antioxidant more than anything else. Inflammatory issues in the body, blood work. This is Danielle's. My blood work CRP is 2.97. That's moderately high. If you're over 5, pack your bags, make sure your will's in order. If you're at over a 5 for long periods of time, your cardiac risk is huge. I'm taking support supplements to thyroid and adrenals. I'm doing many things for an inflammation, but should I be alarmed with such a high result with CRP? It is high. You don't want to stay up there, but you need to figure out if your thyroid and adrenal issues are neurological or immunological. Many thyroid issues are not the thyroid organ itself. It's actually going to be an immune system issue, Hashimoto's or Graves' disease, or a neurological issue, which Graves' disease oftentimes can be neurological, can be immunological as well. But I see a lot of Graves patients, they resolve with neurological work. So, Sarah, I've always been confused about the fermented, lacto-fermented foods are good or bad for people dealing with yeast overgrowth, candida. Again, my opinion on yeast and candida is not, like, I love fermented foods and I think people should be eating sauerkraut and things like that on a regular basis. So again, it comes down to candida overgrowth is going to be more about your digestive health than it is about your diet. Yes, you can feed yeast, but it's more about digestion than it is about nutrition. So, I know that people are like, eliminate anything with yeast in it, eliminate kombuchas, eliminate apple cider vinegar even. I've heard eliminate all the fermented foods and things, which I typically don't find that necessary with, and I have some people we do. We like, listen, let's get this under control, and we do a candida diet. As quick as possible, people with severe issues. So it's give and take when necessary. I knew my C-section son was a big issue to IV drips, antibiotics, Irene. My husband struggles with his weight since the teenagehood. When a paleo diet, lost quite a bit. Back-to-back pneumonia and bronchitis with 2 rounds of antibiotics. We eat clean, organic, strive for lots of healthy fat and veggies, but doesn't seem to be losing any weight. Any suggestions? Should I detox or focus on rebuilding his gut? You got to know whether the gut needs rebuild or not. Obviously, if he's been on antibiotics, I'd definitely be incorporating some fermented foods there. I would definitely be using Restore there in that situation. And I would definitely want to be, I'd want to test that and see what's going on, get an idea of what's happening internally. So, person going to home birth after 2 hospital births. Kids firstborn 5, stop 3, babies June section, psychotropic drugs and supplements. 33-year-old son has lots of food sensitivity, environmental allergens, autism spectrum, OCD. Was allergic to his own yeast. Yes, that's incredibly bad when somebody's allergic to yeast and then they have yeast overgrowth. Really bad situation there. Large poops and constipation. What can help? Our Dr. Josh Sebo, probiotics, psychotropic drugs, supplements, etc. We got to get some testing in there, Janine. We got to get, and Dr. Axe is my cousin. Love him, love his products, but testing is critical. Josh promotes a lot of products without understanding that each person is individualized. So they may be good, but they're not always what's necessary for everyone. That's where testing comes in. Okay, what's a good echinacea supplement? I have autoimmune issues, so the echinacea is a nope for me. So if we're dealing with viral, I'm going to go with like a honeysuckle reishi mushroom. My elderberry, honeysuckle, and reishi. I know that a lot of yucca, I know that a lot of people will say out there online that you don't want to do elderberry with autoimmune. I've never seen an autoimmune person, Crohn's disease or any other lupus, Hashimoto's deal and have issues with elderberry. They do and can during infections support the natural inflammatory immune response, but it also increases IL-10, which if you look into autoimmune issues, elevated IL-10 actually is something they would want to work on to try and create drugs that would bring down the inflammation. So it has an immunomodulatory balancing act, but is strengthening that inflammatory aspect when necessary. So vaccines, question mark, cause encephalopathy. Absolutely they do, because they increase, and also the use of Tylenol, aspirin, or any fever reducers can increase the risk of encephalopathy, both from infections or from vaccinations. Okay. Sorry, I'm maybe having to skip over or miss some of these. What about colloidal silver? In times and places, I'll use colloidal silver. I like herbs more than anything else, though. Top list, most has for rebuild, musical lining. Typo there. Mucosal lining. So upper GI, licorice. Lower GI, chamomile. Those two would be like my go-tos. Ashley, that's actually my assistant. Never mind. Will I be able to rewatch this? Yes. She's going to send out a link. Amber, I got sepsis. Honeysuckle actually helps with sepsis. They did a puncture-induced sepsis effect in rats and mice, and honeysuckle has actually substantially improved outcomes in sepsis. Also, vagal nerve stimulation, chiropractic adjustments in sepsis situations would absolutely. Vagus, though, you got to do upper cervical adjustments with affect the vagus nerve, but also vagal nerve stimulation, where you basically have a low electrical device and you basically press it around behind the carotid right here in the neck. And another thing, vitamin C in sepsis. Blood thinner could have damaged my gut. Yeah. Would a consult be recommended for a toddler with eczema? Absolutely, Lauren. We help a lot of kids with those histamine-driven autoimmune type responses, allergic responses. So we help a lot of kids. I've seen eczema just completely resolve. It's phenomenal when we see those kids not have to itch like crazy. I've seen some of them that literally tear their skin off, it looks like, as they're itching so hard. Have an issue with taking ACV and the brain gut connection, feel crazy after taking it. Gut flares also. Next question, is there a good time besides menses for taking GI test with Wellness Way gives? The question, I'm kind of a little confused there. Is there's somebody drawing on the screen again, and I'm not even touching my computer. This is like somebody hacked into my computer. GI test, as soon as possible. I mean, obviously, if you're doing a hormonal test, you're going to want to do that on the timing basis. But GI, like, you can take that at any point in time. If you're feeling crazy, that type of thing, we got something we need to figure out with apple cider vinegar. And it may be an allergy to yeast that's creating that effect. Good recommendation for a baby who had formula fed. I can't breastfeed. Baby is 3 months old currently. So I might, in situations when it calls for, camel's milk is phenomenal, actually, really, really close to human milk. Organic camel's milk, like, that would be a great one. Utilizing ancestral supplements, we carry those. We can get some to utilize if baby never got any colostrum at all. And then I would say, you know what, find a best friend, family member. My wife's, one of her best friends nursed one of her kids, or multiple of her kids. My sister's nursed multiple of her kids because of just timing with other. And I know that some people think that's weird, but yet that increases microbial diversity. And that's the way society had worked for so long. Women helped women throughout pregnancy and labor. And think about it, ladies, breastfeeding is not fun. At least my wife doesn't think so. I've been breastfeeding like 5 years straight. And so she's like, I can't wait to have her body to herself. And I'm pretty sure she's telling me that I don't even get to, never mind. Yeah, they're off limits. So it's kind of a sore subject for me. What kind of test do you suggest for constipated? We'll do the stool sample and probably a food allergy test, and to see if any inflammatory foods are being ingested on a regular basis causing the constipation. So those would be big. Again, like, my constipation is primarily coming from my scoliosis in my lower back. So again, you could look at a chiropractic solution, possibly. You could be looking at a inflammatory bowel issue going on or just a lack of good bacteria, maybe not pathogenic or anything like that. So a stool sample, and all these tests we can send to you. So people, you don't have to live locally to be able to utilize my assistance. What do you do to reduce IgA load? Albizia, Janine. Albizia. You can also look at helping to stabilize the histamine responses with nettle, and we carry both of those herbs. Nettle over the long term improves free testosterone, which can be beneficial for men, but over the long term could lead to other problems if you elevate the testosterone too long. With that, there's kind of that possibility, not necessarily that nettle has been shown to cause problems, but when you look at it physiologically and hormonally, you may end up with some problems. Can you do ACV and licorice at the same time? Yes, Amanda. And licorice, with licorice root, one of the things I should note is because it can slow the breakdown of cortisol. So like adrenal fatigue and failure and things like that, licorice can be beneficial for, but if it slows the breakdown, you don't want to take licorice in the evenings. Take it morning, midday, and that would be it. Kind of before noon, just to be safe, because you want that cortisol level to plummet and go down in the evening so you can go and you can sleep. Camels. Yes. Camels, the milk is very, very similar to human milk. So you could go with something like that. It just stinks. It does when it's a very sad situation, and it's not, a lot of women that just the circumstances, stress, different things can be, and again, chamomile may help with production of mucus and breast milk and things like that. There's herbs that help with that situation, and that's what we want to help first. But when you can't breastfeed, and that's truly just a barrier there, then you do all you can. And those are the things I would look into. Please mention someone on PCOS. So PCOS, PCOS, it could be a blood sugar regulatory issue. It could be a pelvic problem. And what I mean by that is more sacral pelvis area, subluxation misalignments. I've had women with endometriosis and PCOS completely resolved with nothing but chiropractic care. And then some we are looking at hormonal dysregulation and inflammatory issues there. So it's a combination. PCOS can come from kind of a plethora of things. It's more of an inflammatory problem. And one of the things they give to PCOS in women with PCOS is metformin. So that's why I say it could be even looking into blood sugar, beginning stages and signs of diabetes. Holly, when to take ACV? Right before meals. Sorry, I didn't mention that with meals, right before meals every morning or right before meal, Holly. Thank you for asking that question because, I didn't mention that. Wet nurses. Yes, Janine says, what was the supplement? Ancestral supplements. We carry those. Colostrum will be the one through your site. It's not on the website yet, but you can call the office or text us, and then my staff getting a hold of you. They'll walk you through it. Chamomile for mucosal lining. You are talking about the concentrated supplement. You said not just a tea. Yes, if we're dealing with it, like we really want to build up a mucosal lining, we're talking about the liquid herb supplement. And again, Wellness Way has some of the best. It's like once you know how to process these herbs correctly, once you know the way in which you farm, like true regenerative soil farming, that's what we want. And we utilize the farmers that do that. And then on top of that, we test the herbs for their potency, because how they're grown, the stresses they're under, things like that can affect their the compounds that are generated in that herb. So we do our testing and things like that because we really want the clinical benefits, because that's ultimately what it comes down to. We wouldn't be busy like we are as Wellness Way docs if our herbs didn't work, because we're using those as the medicine to help people heal. AC for everybody, 9 to 11, dose and timing. Before meals, Ashley, thanks for asking that too. And yes, kids of all ages, maybe not a 1-year-old. 1-year-old that, I don't have problems if the kid is eating solids and things like that and putting it on things. We haven't given it to Ren yet, but Ren is still, breastfeeding and driving my wife nuts because loves to breastfeed through the night. Yishka says Graves. Gosh, Graves is a nasty one, but I'm telling you, chiropractic care oftentimes makes a world of difference. What are your thoughts on ACV tea? My boys have been drinking ACV in warm water with a cinnamon stick, clove, garlic, sweetened with a little honey. I have no problem with it. I really don't. If you have the right microbiota and mucus, generation in the digestive tract and the gut and the mucosal barriers in the throat, esophagus, and around the mouth, you really don't run into the issues of it like deteriorating teeth and things like that the acid they claim could do. And the reality is you're not really swishing it on your teeth. If you drink something, really it doesn't hit your teeth. So people saying it's bad for your teeth is like, well, then I don't know how. I don't drink through my teeth. So that's just some stuff I've heard. What are okay for them to have frequently? My son is 2 and a vaccine injured and has been a ton problem gut. They keep telling us it's E. coli. Keep putting him on antibiotics? And if they put him on multiple rounds of antibiotics there, Jessica, and the reality is you're going to the wrong doctors. They're using drugs. They destroy and wipe the slate clean, and it's antibiotic resistance and that coli that just keeps spurring back on. So you need to work on his GI system, and you need to figure out what aspects and what areas that are affected the most right now, and you need to start rebuilding. And we can do that, Jessica. I work with kids all the time that have been vaccine injured, and with those intestinal problems. Could possibly present itself as E. coli when it's really something else, caused by something else. Could be, yeah. Are they testing or are they just guessing? That's the situation where I don't know whether they're guessing or testing. I don't want to see the lab work that's already been done on your kid and schedule a consultation. Let's get on the phone. Let's really walk through kind of what we can start doing, and let's get some testing on the kid. My sister got PCOS after Gardasil. Yep. Inflammatory immune responses. Thank you. I will text her ASAP. Did you mention specific supplements that would be best for healing candida overgrowth? So no, I didn't actually. Actually acid production. I believe in ACV actually working with that and benefiting the acid production, cleaning it out, changing the diet, and then ultimately reducing stress big time, is typically lowers the production of acid in the upper GI that then can lead to candida. Is a major stress issue oftentimes. And so it's a low acid. So, but as far as candida, there are different herbs that can be sensitive to those yeasts. But then I was blanking on it. Oregon grape. It's going to stimulate. Oregon grape is another herb that Wellness Way utilizes for digestive enzyme production. It doesn't take much, like 10 drops before a meal. I literally did a video last night. First time we gave our 3-year-old and 5-year-old bitter herbs, Oregon grape, and they literally were like, so good. And I'm pretty sure they just wanted to prove us wrong. Me and my wife were like, you're not going to like this. Spicy. You're not going to like this. Very bitter. And she's like, I want to try it. And we're like, no, you're not going to like it because it is very bitter. And she took it and she goes, I want more. She took 2 doses of it. I'm like, I've got Franken kids. Weird. They're like, how in the world do they love herbs so much? But did you mention specifically someone with candida? Yes. Oregon grape would be one. I don't know. Talk about this. I don't know if you talked about, just says, what are your thoughts on GAPS diet to heal the gut? The GAPS diet oftentimes does work. It's not bad. Very low, I believe, histamine responses and things like that in that diet. So it works. It does for some people. So again, I like to do the testing. So just in case something that's okay by the GAPS, if the body's immune system is responding negatively to it, inflammatory wise, then we're going to eliminate it. So we're more critiquing it down even further. All right. I'm going to answer just a couple more questions and I got to go. All right. I love you all. Appreciate you all. This was my first time here. Loved it. Looking forward to the next one. Have learned a lot. Look through your site and supplements. Thank you. Awesome, iPad. So I appreciate y'all. I love you all. Please share the truth. Don't just like it. Take what you've learned today. Knowledge is power only when you use it. Knowledge is not power unless you use it. So make sure that you're using this stuff. And I look forward to helping all of those that need assistance. So text Leaky Gut to 786-808-1302 if you want to work with me directly. All right. Love you all. Have a good night. Bye.